In this wide-ranging sit-down conversation with Jasin Boland, we talk about so many parts of Nikon and the industry. Just days after we recorded this video, the news of Nikon acquiring RED dropped. And thus, at the start of this video, I connect with Jasin on set in Sydney as he's working on his latest Hollywood blockbuster, where we talk about RED, firmware 5, and the Plena. Jasin has been in the motion picture Hollywood movie blockbuster industry for 3 decades plus. He stands next to the cinematographers as they are making critical decisions on how to best capture the films that we love. Jasin knows so much about Hollywood, the industry, and what it takes to make movies. His input, his thoughts, and his understanding of the RED acquisition is unparalleled to almost anybody else we're seeing talk about it in this space. Join me as Jasin shares so much about his world, what it takes to be an on-location photographer, how he gets amongst it when it comes to stunts, and of course we talk about cameras. Do we need more megapixels? What's it like working with the gear? Shooting manual? The fact that we just keep getting free firmware from Nikon, and what lenses is he using on set these days? All of this and so much more from a man who spends all his days working with Hollywood. Join me as we have a really fun chat with a super great bloke. The biggest news, Jasin, that I have ever heard since I've been doing this 3.5 odd decades, RED and Nikon, or Nikon and RED, whichever order you'd like to put it in. The communion of these two massive and exciting companies is just amazing. But you've been in the industry for 3 decades, so you've got insight that I reckon most of us don't have. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I've been listening to, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading everything about the RED acquisition and that, and you know, there's a lot of experts out there, and you know, I don't claim to be an expert, but I've got 30 years in the industry, and I'm around these cameras, every working day of my career, and there's a few things that they're missing out on, to tell you the truth, Matt. And you're one of the only people that I know that have actually brought any of it up, and I reckon we need to set the record straight a little bit on what cinematographers and what the film industry expect out of this marriage.
Then let's do it. Tell us the reaction. I mean, there's got to be a bit of talk about it on set, surely. I would have thought it's reasonably big news. What's going on? What are you hearing, and what's your reaction to it?
Every day, we're all talking about it. Like, because everyone knows I'm a Nikon ambassador or a Nikon ambassador, and they're like, whoa, this is so cool. And it's like, yeah, it is. But, the main thing that that the experts have been banging on about in the stills world on YouTube and stuff like that is that they think that the cinema world want Nikon's autofocus and the Z mount and stuff like that. Now, obviously, that is going to be an absolute dead set bonus if it can happen. But what they're most excited about is the fact that they're going to get S-glass for PL and possibly PV. Now, PL mount is ARRI proprietary, but that's also what RED uses. Now, PV is Panavision. So I would think, and again, everyone, I have no inside knowledge. I just have my own experience and that sort of stuff. That I would say that, well, I know that that's what everyone's excited about. They are excited about the thought of NIKKOR lenses, the S class and the Plenas being available in a PL mount. Now, no cinematographer, no film, no nothing has ever been made with autofocus in the history of cinema, ever. So anyone that's talking about that can toss that out because they're wrong. As simple as that, completely wrong. They have a whole team of people. They have a focus puller. They have, clapper loaders and all of that. It's a massive team to look after one camera, and it's manual focus. It's not autofocus, and I don't see it ever being that way. But having said that, to have the ability to shoot Z-mount lenses on a RED is going to be pretty rad for a lot of reasons. But the thought of a collaboration with PL mount lenses is what is exciting everyone, like, through the roof.
Just simply from a business perspective, it makes so much sense that Z Glass can come to all of these other mounts, because from a business perspective, it opens up a whole lot of new customers that are hungry for the best glass out there. And well, you and I can't think of anything better than lenses like the Plena, which does segue me over to, we talked about it last time we caught up and you said, I'm going to get one of those. That sounds awesome. And you've been using it, what, 2 or 3 weeks now? How's it going?
I love this little baby. Oh my gosh. It's so beautiful. Hey, just quickly on what you said about the lenses. Now, that's 100% true, but a little known fact too is that cinematographers have been rehousing, and so has Panavision and Arri, have been rehousing Nikon glass for longer than what I've been in the industry for. The 24 to 70 has been legendary, and what they do is, because of focus drift in the old days, they just realign the elements and then they rehouse them, put a PL or a PV mount on it, and away you go. So Nikon glass in the film industry is nothing new. In fact, it's some of the best glass that is available, and it's just going to take it next level. Before we even talk about, you know, what RED has to offer Nikon with the sensors and the body, and you know, I mean, it's just so exciting for everyone. Like I'm like blown away completely.
Yeah, well, I think you and I were probably both pretty speechless. I was driving up a mountain when I heard the news, and I'm like to my wife, it's like, I got to stop, I got to make a video. This is the biggest news ever. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely huge. And obviously, like, you would be seeing RED cameras, you know, I presume, I don't know, like, the productions say this production's a RED production, this production here might be an RE production, and this one's a Panavision, or do they sometimes mix and match cameras? You'd know way more about that.
That's a really good question, actually, because we're talking about that as well. And the RED can make a really small camera, so they're great for action films. So
if crash cam.
Yeah, so if there's a massive action sequence, well then you'll more than likely to find amongst the Arris and amongst the Panavision cameras some REDs. You know, the little box, chuck a lens on it, and away you go. So you know, from my point of view, working in the film industry, Nikon's just hit the ball way out of the ballpark. I mean, the other ones, you know, the other camera manufacturers or stills manufacturers that, you know, do really good video, theirs aren't really used for filmmaking, to tell you the truth. They're used for documentary work and you know, EPK, the making of videos on film sets and stuff like that, but they're not really used for making movies.
Panavision, RE and RED are obviously the 3 big ones, and we can see that RED are involved in a lot of huge productions because it's on their website. The Marvels and all sorts of stuff, Mission Impossible, like, and so much Netflix stuff, like, they are hugely involved. But it also sounds like even if it's an RE or Panavision centric production, they still might have a couple of REDs on it for the tight shots and the more dangerous shots as well. So RED are kind of everywhere by the sounds of it.
Yeah, 100%. You know, it's a real good hybrid system that that because they've been independently owned, I guess, and you know, the owner himself is a fascinating story, really worth looking up. You know, just his past and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Selling Oakley for 2.1 billion and then going, hey, why don't we be disruptors in the cinema industry when everybody was still shooting on film, and people like Michael Bay and David Finchner have had their own custom handmade RED cameras. I mean, Jason, I'm looking forward to you and I getting our own custom handmade RED cameras one day, maybe, just for fun. Not, you know, one of the cheaper ones.
To shoot our conversations, mate.
Exactly, mate. That's what we need. We need 8K global. Or, you know, I'm happy for 6K global. But no, seriously, I totally agree with you. It's just the most phenomenal thing. It catapults Nikon into this space, which is, you know, gives them the name, opens lots of doors and makes them incumbent. And from everything that I've read from both Nikon and from the RED side of it, you know, Nikon are planning to let RED continue to do what RED do, and obviously giving them, you know, all of the support that Nikon can give them. So it sounds like a wonderful marriage from my perspective.
Yeah, it's massive. And then, you know, did you see the ATOMOS they put out a press release that they're excited about it. So I don't know.
Yes,
I don't know.
I saw that.
Watch this space. Well, I don't know.
I hear you, man, and I had the same reaction. I think it was about 24 hours ago. It's like, oh yeah, why are they talking about it so strongly? Look, it's been a big week since we've talked, Jason, hasn't it?
Man, it's like, I don't know. There's like puppy dog years, horse years, and now there's got to be Nikon years, because it's like, you know, we spoke like 5 days ago or something, and in that time, Nikon's bought RED. They brought out the firmware 5. It's just like, it's crazy. Honestly, I just wake up in the mornings going, well, what's Nikon going to bring us today?
Can I tell you something? We still haven't had any hardware yet this year, which means I think it's going to be a hardware-packed year. But, you know, we'll talk about that next. Talk to me about firmware 5.
Oh, yeah, and the improvements to the auto capture for me is really good too, actually.
Yeah, right.
It was user error for me that I was getting some, not, I wouldn't call it an issue, I was getting a non-activation, and it was 2 settings that I had, and one of them was manual focus. So, and I believe that they've addressed that now. So that's that's a big thing for me. And the pre-capture, bringing that down to 15 frames a second, I mean, that's very cool, because I mean, like, you know, I love shooting 20 frames a second, you know, especially on action, but I don't really need the 30 or 120 in all honesty. I mean, I know that there's uses that people have for it, but for me, I don't really. The very only thing that I'd like to see is 10 frames a second pre-capture in RAW. Even five frames a second in RAW would be helpful. But I don't know whether that's something that the camera at this stage is capable of. I wouldn't have a clue. But I want RAW.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even people have suggested, why don't we have just a high efficiency star, which is using 60% of the data. Look, my belief is, from a technical perspective, it's probably possible, just like I think pixel shift will probably come. And I just think these things are coming. I think Nikon have got so much on their plate. And if we have a look at what's in firmware 5, to me it was more the firmware that came after the Z8 launched rather than the firmware that came after 2.0.
Yeah.
So I feel like this firmware, you know, might have just taken a little bit longer to get to us. And I still think there's more to squeeze out of the Z9. And I don't know anything either. You and I know equally as much, but I feel like there's more stuff to come. And you know, it's so exciting that they just keep bringing us more stuff, because there's actually over 20 new tweaks and features and additions to the Z9 in firmware 5 that aren't in any other camera. So they're actually bringing a lot of things, you know, new things, which a lot of it is niche. But if you're that photographer that's going to really benefit from one of those 20 things, that's a big deal, rather than buying a new camera, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. That one extra thing is out of 20, you know, that pretty much means there's something for everyone in it, you know. And I don't think the Z9's finished by a long shot with these updates. I honestly think that this is still the very beginning of it. And, you know, right down to, you know, I'm hearing a lot of reports that the focus has got even better in low light.
Exactly.
You know, this is just crazy stuff, and these are things that can be tweaked all the way through, one would think. So I'm just excited about it, like you're saying, and, you know, between that and, again, my Plena.
Yeah, let's talk about the Plena. It's a new member of the family. This is your first movie.
Oh, it's so good, because we've got a lot of night shoots and stuff, eh? So
no, so good.
So it's just like screaming at me, and, you know, I'll have you know, I have a black rapid double on all the time, and I have a single as well for if I'm just using a single camera. But at the moment, I'm wearing a Plena, and I'm wearing a 50mm 1.2 or an 85 1.2 when it's you know, when it's night and super low light, and other times I'll just have the 24 to 70 and one of those lenses. But the Plena is the one that's getting all the love at the moment, and those perfect little coloured golf balls in the back of my frame. Oh my gosh, it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's an extraordinarily cinematic lens. You know, you don't get the aberrations and you don't get the flaring. I mean, you get a little bit of flaring, but geez, everything is suppressed so much. So you've got such a clean result, which then, you know, you can dirty that up in post if you want to, or it's clean for however the marketing departments want to use it. I think you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, well, I love a dirty frame, as you probably know, and everyone knows.
Me too.
I don't. As I've said 100 times, I don't look in the mirror and see an artist. And but then when I look at my photos, it's like, oh, why did I do that?
Stop it! You got to stop that. I'm going to get you over that by 2025. I'm going to get you over that.
Keeps me up. Keeps me striving. But
that's all right.
But yeah, but the Plena is it's really some amazing piece of glass. There's no denying that. And as we've been saying, it's just exciting times. And you know, we had to do this video. We had to update our video talk from a few days ago because so much news came out. And it's like, you know, me talking to you about the Plena, I literally got off our meeting, and I ordered it.
It's absolutely amazing, and you know, we all very much look forward to seeing the images from the 135. You know, when you're allowed to share them, mate. Thank you for jumping in here and talking RED, talking firmware 5, talking Plena. I can't wait to catch up with you again ASAP. Enjoy your shoot in Sydney. How long have you got to go on unit? Another 8 weeks or something?
Yeah, another few months, and then
oh God,
then I'll be home for 4 days, and then fly out again after that till the end of the year.
Living the dream, living the dream. I love it. All right, mate. Well, we'll go back to the other part of the video where I sign off for us. All right. See you later, buddy.
Thanks,
Enjoy.
buddy.
You've told me you're just a couple of days away from heading to Sydney for your next film, which you probably can't tell us what that is. That's probably top secret, or can you?
No, not really. No. You know, I mean, like top secret world, but you know, you can look it up on IMDb in a week's time, and it'll be there for you anyway. But yeah, it's a big action film though, and you know what I'm like. I froth a little bit when I get a big action film. And,
yeah.
I like to put myself into the zone, get the shot for everyone.
Beautiful. And talking about big action films, obviously you did Fury Road a few years back, and you've Furiosa was what, the middle of last year?
Oh, it's going to be brilliant. Anya Taylor-Joy and
yes,
Chris Hemsworth. Oh my gosh! And you know, it's
has he got a prosthetic nose on in the film, Chris?
You'll have to go and see.
Yeah, all right. I've seen the trailer and it doesn't look a lot. You know, it's like, is that Chris? I'm not sure.
I know, it's pretty amazing. You know, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to say, but it's definitely something completely different for him and for everyone. You know, I mean, you're talking about George Miller here, who is probably. I struggle to think of a better organised and creative director that I've ever worked with. I mean, how his brain works is way beyond me. It really blows me away just what he does every single day. And anyone that doubts him is a fool, because George, I can promise you, will have a big rabbit to pull out of a hat.
Well, it's amazing. He's clearly deeply creative, but obviously deeply technical. And you're saying he's also very, very organised. To get all of that in one package, I think, would be pretty rare, wouldn't it?
Well, it is. And plus, on top of that, he's extremely collaborative, which is not necessarily rare, but you feel comfortable being able to talk to him. And, you know, everyone from his sound department, his art department, his wardrobe, makeup, even stills, you know. I mean, like, he will sit there and tell anyone that's interested how I influenced the look of Fury Road with my stills. And, I mean, I go to places and George will be there and he'll just come out with it and tell everyone. And it's like, it's shocking, because you just don't get that sort of grandiose feedback, so to speak. And you know, my son sits there and goes, "Oh, not again."
And this is from an Academy Award-winning master, so that's got to be really, really, just really. I mean, what an awesome space to be. And you've obviously worked with Chris Hemsworth a lot. Extraction 1, Extraction 2, bloody amazing films. And you were getting deep in, like, right into the action in those films, weren't you?
Yeah, I love it. You know, you know, as photographers, Matt, you know, I mean, you're a great photographer yourself. And as photographers, we're only as good as the access we create for ourselves. And by that, I don't mean you're jumping into a spot. It's like working the whole room. And, you know, there's a lot of trust that needs to come from that. And, you know, I start off and I will go and pick a zone where I want to be. I'll go and speak to stunts first. Then I'll speak to safety. Then I'll speak to first assistant director. And then I'll let everyone know where I am. Now, when you're doing this, it's like you have to hold your position. You can't move, 30 centimeters left or right, because they're giving you a position that is safe for where you've told them you're going to be, not to the left or to the right of it. And, you know, because I respect all that part of it, they put me in some pretty insane spots. I mean, you've seen that video of me on the roof of the train in Prague. And, you know, that's just, most photographers never get that in their entire life, but it's because the safety department and stunts and everyone else want me to get the shot. And they know that, you know, I'm going to play by the rules, and, you know, that's what it's all about. And I can't stress how important access is enough, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, I remember you telling me when we last chatted, you'd not that long ago finished shooting the latest James Bond, and how they'd done a car roll somewhere and how they'd placed you pretty close to the action. So it sounds like you're close to the action all the time, and I also know that that's the place that you like to be. So it's bloody exciting.
Well, Kappa said once about his war photography or his conflict photography, if your shot's not good enough, you're not close enough. And I was always a long lens guy, you know, and I thought that was how to capture action. And, you know, the last 10 or 15 years, I've got in there closer and closer and closer. And, you know, shooting action on a 50 mil doesn't get much better than that.
Which, this is a beautiful segue to talk about cameras, lenses, firmware, and how you and I last chatted when the Z9 very first came out. And I think you hadn't even used it on the first film when we last chatted at the end of 2021, the start of 2022. Too long, got to do it sooner.
Yeah.
Next time. Tell me, what's the journey been moving to the Z9 and Z8 and ZF, all of these XP7 cameras, along with the amazing glass that we've seen over the last 2 years? Tell me about how that's impacted you as a creator. Like, you're getting in there, you've got people flying past you at 50 miles an hour or whatever, and you've got to get the shot. What's it like?
I've got to tell you, the first thing that comes to my mind is just flat out mirrorless, right? Because in my job, as you know, you've seen the big old blimps, you know, the lunch boxes we used to have to put our cameras in to keep them soundproof. And then along came mirrorless, and Nikon didn't have mirrorless for quite some time, but for me also, the cameras that were out weren't quite up to speed. I couldn't capture the action like I could on like a D5 or a D4S. So I really stuck with it to make it work. Now, the first thing that comes to mind now, the second that you said it, was that I can stuff a camera into places which I would never have been able to do before. You know, when you've got a camera up to your face, it's not just the camera, it's your big old head. And when you're trying to get in,
it takes up space.
It takes up space. And when you're trying to get into a hole, you know, you can't do it. And, you know, just the screens, the articulating screens and things like that. You know, when I'm mounting a camera, before I used to, you know, have to stick my head in to check out settings and things like that. Now I can turn it around and have a good look, and, you know, you can use the Nikon software to have a look at exposure and change your settings and things like that. So, you know, it's really, really opened up some crazy creative doors for me with the mirrorless. And then, of course, you go from Z6 II and Z6 VII, which I still use. I use my Z6 II and, well, 2s and 7s as my crash cams. So I put them in harm's way, and, you know, I have my formulas, so they're actually, the way that I set things up, they're actually pretty safe. But, and they get hit quite frequently, but they don't break, which is good to know. And and then of course you've got the Z9 and the Z8, which is absolutely next level. Now there's uses for both cameras, absolutely undeniably there. They both have strengths, and I'm not going to say weaknesses because they're not. There's only strengths that you, as a photographer, we should look at the strengths of our tools and use those strengths. We shouldn't be looking at what we perceive as something which isn't quite doing what you want, because there's another tool that will do it. So,
well, can I say, as a photographer, I think, you know, we've both been doing this for decades. I think one of the things that I love about real photographers is we know our equipment intimately, and there are never any weaknesses, because it's like a racing car driver. We know how hard we can take it into the corner. We know how hard we can accelerate out of the corner. So nothing ever goes wrong. We know what we're doing, and we work within the parameters, the specifications of the camera. So I actually get really excited about knowing my gear and taking it to its limit and achieving within that tool. So I totally agree with you. There's no such thing as the downsides. It's just how hard can I keep pushing the upsides?
Well, absolutely. And the analogy about the Formula One is so 100% true. Now, you know, we pick up different lenses for different uses. Like, you know, I'll pick up my 50mm 1.2 and I'll be blown away, but I can't use that on everything, you know. So I'll pick up my 24-70 2.8 and it does. Now, it's no different to a camera body. So, you know, there's not one size fits all. And this is, you know, you and I have spoken about this before, especially about focus modes. And it's like, I'm about to lose count of how many focus modes that Nikon have given us these days. Well, and all manufacturers, to be honest. But, you know, I think there's 9 or 10. But the one mode that people forget about is off. And off is an absolute mode. Otherwise, they wouldn't have it. So
yeah. I mean, from a subject detection perspective, you might not be shooting a bird, a plane, a car, or a person. You might be shooting flowers or a building. So you don't want to detect stuff that you're not shooting. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I use
plus shooting manual. I presume, do you mean shooting manual as well? I mean, your crash cams, you might just want a wide lens at f5.6, and you don't need to follow focus because it's just too crazy, and you don't actually know what how the action's actually going to play out always.
Well, that's where focus peaking comes in, you know. I mean, like, you know, I think that's one of the most brilliant additions to these cameras. You know, video's had it for many, many years, but we haven't had it in stills. And I going to the manual thing, yes, I shoot manual all the time. I shoot manual manual exposure only. And in, I don't even want to give a percentage, but it might only be 10 to 20% manual focus, but almost 100% manual focus on my mounted rigs or crash cam rigs. And
because you're not there to change things anyway. I think you can change in snap bridge focus, I think, but in your situation, if you're running multiple cameras and the action's happening, you're not going to be fiddling with your phone. That's for sure. But this does segue me to auto capture, firmware updates. Maybe we'll start with firmware updates first. So we got the Z9, and then after a little while, they just kept giving us firmware 2, firmware 3, firmware 4, and we get more and more amazing features. One of those features was auto capture, which we'll talk about. But how, you know, as an operative in the field, you're working on the biggest Hollywood blockbusters, you've invested in probably what, 2 or 3 Z9s, and your camera just keeps becoming state of the art every 6 months. It just gets, like, it was already state of the art when it came out, but it just keeps getting better. How is that?
Well, 2 years later, no one else has got an answer to the Z9, have they? So, you know,
no,
and there's been no air given to anyone. But at the same time, I'm sure that they're backwards manufacturing, and you know, they're looking at ways to beat it. But it's only good for all of us, isn't it? Because you know, what's next? And I honestly, I can't imagine what's next for Nikon with what they're doing. And these firmware updates, any other manufacturer would be paying for an S, Mark II or Mark IV, you know, in new bodies.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've thought about this a lot, Matt. And, you know, as a Nikon ambassador, we're actually not given any inside information. I'm sure a lot of people think that we're, you know, sitting in there doing the screws and, you know, working away. But we're not, you know, we have to...
Jason, what do you think? Should we put a button here or not? And that, you know, the camera's coming out in 2 years. No, that's not happening.
No, it doesn't happen. And we get at the same sort of time as what you do to, you know, if we're lucky enough to get to test. And it really, they blow me away. Like, you know, these firmware updates, it's... the only thing that I can think of is that because the tech is so good, it's kind of like, why would you go and spend millions or... I want to say billions, but it's probably not. But, you know, millions and millions of dollars on R&D when you already have a market and you can just tweak it and bring in those new customers with firmware, free firmware. You know, it's...
Yeah. I mean, look, yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, you know, we got the Z9. The Z9's had amazing firmware, but now we've got a Z8, which is a mini Z9, which, as you're talking about cameras in tight spaces and different use cases, the fact that the Z8 has 2 USB-C ports, so you can put power delivery into it and you can remotely control it with the MC10 grip. You know, it's got its own set of features. And it now appears with firmware 2.0 of the Z8 that maybe it's also on a firmware journey of its own. You know, and to me, it looks like XPEED 7 and the way the design philosophy that Nikon had around XPEED 7 was, we're going to build it kind of like a platform, like iOS, you know, like a computer platform, which we can plug things into and we can just keep expanding. And so they've brought us things like auto capture. And is auto capture something that, because from my perspective, it's something that you need to learn how to use, and it's not something that we are really used to as photographers, and we're often in a hurry. Is that something that you might bring into, or you already have brought into your world using auto capture?
100%, you know. The only thing for mine is because things move so quickly that sometimes I will stick to my tried and true process, but the auto capture is absolutely brilliant. And you know, my process is actually a lot harder. You know, I'm layering pocket wizards and, you know, putting them, you know, you've got to know where to put them. You can't go through metal, you can't go through this, you know, there's so many limitations. So especially with wildlife, the auto capture is, you know, there's nothing that's gonna beat it. I mean, like, you know, you stick it in the desert in front of a herd of elephants, and, you know, away you go. You can literally away you go. Go off and do something else, and come back and pick up your camera and take it home for a big surprise of what you captured. So yeah, you know, it's just all amazing innovation, and it's going to be interesting to see, you know, with the Olympics coming up, how much of this tech is being used, and I'm sure that it's going to get utilized a load. You know, the biggest problem is with remote rigs is most people like to have them wired. I don't. I like to use wireless. And the thing about, obviously, the auto capture is there's no wires. So you literally...
Yeah, it's just the camera is its own person.
It really is. You know, it's so intuitive. And the whole system is... You know, the Z9 and the Z8, especially the Z9, because, you know, I like the purchase, I like the weight on a camera. Yeah. It's the camera that, you know, I always dreamed about, and I, you know, I joke about it, but it really is, for me on a film set, it's the perfect camera, and, you know, I don't miss anything. And you know, you have to select your lenses. Your lenses are very, very important with these cameras. With all the new Nikons, everything that you tell the camera to do, it will do. So if you tell it to do the wrong thing, you're not going to be happy. And, you know, I read on social media all the time, you know, people with, right, with Z9s and Z8s, it's...
How often is it user error? Keep like, going, buddy. Keep going.
My screen's gone black, or my EVF's gone black, and it's like, yeah, you press the button, and you know what? That's cool. And the only part that I don't like is when, you know, these maybe more experienced photographers sit there and slam these guys. And it's kind of like, you know what? This guy bought this camera because they love it. Why should they have to have a lesser camera just because they don't know everything about it at the moment? And social media is meant to be social. And if someone sits there and asks a question because they didn't read the manual or didn't want to read the manual or can't understand the manual, just don't answer them if you're going to give them a crappy answer. It's you know, it's not that hard to be nice. And I know this is going off on a tangent, but you know, I've got my bugbears.
Well, look, we are all part of a community, and you know, even so, we might be closer to the mothership. It doesn't mean we're not humans, and it doesn't mean we don't read comments and forums and kind of go, why is it that people are wanting to be destructive rather than constructive? We're actually all interested in making beautiful pictures, and it's one of the reasons I actually started on YouTube was I started to see this very firm delineation between people who want to talk about photography and cameras and art and creating, and people who are just making drama around the industry. And they're two very separate things. Like they're actually completely unrelated. But here, I'm kind of pretending to be a photo channel and I'm all about photography, but actually what I want to do is create a lot of drama so I can, you know, grow my channel. And I think personally that has only been detrimental to the community and the industry as a whole. So, you know, you and I, we can just keep chipping away at trying to keep the world, keep things
talk
nice.
Them down.
You know?
I get some nasty ones myself. And I sit there and it's like, why would you say that to me? And like I start off really quite aggressive, and then by the end of it, it's apologetic, and you know, I end up giving him a follow and stuff like that. So it's, you know, I mean, like it's
yeah.
People have reasons for doing what they do, I think, and I think when they see that it's not healthy, that you know they actually see that it's not healthy for everyone involved. So, but you know, with those cameras, they are for everyone. You know, just because one person has more experience than another doesn't mean you can't go and buy a Z9 or a Z8. Exactly. And especially the Z8. The Z8, you know, for me is the mirrorless D850. There's absolutely no denying that. It's a brilliant camera. And if you can afford it, I'd be, you know, you go out and get it. And that's the other thing too, you know, let's talk about that just quickly. You know, there's a lot of people that are still using their F-mount lenses, and whether you want to believe it or not, there is a difference. I haven't found any difference in focus, to tell you the truth, and I still use my 120 to 300 2.8 quite frequently, and you know, because nice. Nikon don't have one in a Z mount yet, but I just recommend anyone, you know, to start your collection of S-mount lenses. And I'll give you a quick little tip, right? I was on Shang-Chi, and it was before the 70 to 200 came out, and I was using the F-mount 70 to 200, and literally my Z-mount 70 to 200 arrived on set, and it was like, you know, handed over to me, and I took off the F-mount and put on the Z mount, and I photographed the exact same scene in the exact same light, and I was blown away with the density. It goes back to, I think, you know, like I started photography, I can tell you the date actually, professional photography, September 22, 1981. And there was a few photographers at the newspaper that I worked on that used Leica, and I could see the difference in those days, and they showed me. It was, we went to a Leica store or whatever it was, and the density of the glass was 10 times denser than any other manufacturer. And since then, of course, you know, we've come on board with that density, and that is the only way that I can describe the S lenses for the Z mount, is that there's so much more clarity. There's the blacks are blacker. Everything is just that tiny little bit richer. And that is because that rear element is that much closer to the sensor, so the light has less to bend. And it's absolutely brilliant. So anyone that sits there and goes, "Oh, you don't need that, the large mount and the rear element so much closer," then can they please tell me why Nikon and Canon went and did that?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I mean, the Plena, the 135 Plena came out, and Nikon basically said, "This is us now, more than any other lens to date. Besides the Noct, we're exploiting the full capabilities of the Z mount." And when you talk about the suppression of chromatic aberration and flare and the general fidelity and clarity coming through the lens, that lens, the 85 1.2, the 50 1.2, the 50 1.2 is a bit old, it's about 3 years old now. But all of these lenses, they cut through the atmosphere and just give us the most astonishing outcomes. And then you get the people going, "Oh yeah, but it's too clinical." And I think to myself, isn't it better to start from a baseline of having it as clean as possible? And then if you want to dirty it up in post, knock yourself out. But you can't go the other way. You can't go from dirty to clean unless you want to go and, frickin' clean each pixel. So yeah, Jason, I'm one of my favorite lenses of all time in the F era was the 85 1.4. I coveted that lens. I wanted that lens, and it has just got nothing on now the modern equivalents. And even the 85 1.8 is better than the 85 the S version is better than the F version. There is no question that the Z mount is bringing us untold riches, and really I think we're only starting to explore it. And like I said with the Plena, I actually think now we've got all the kind of basic lenses that we need for the system, and I think we're going to see more and more of these exotic lenses, what I've called the exotic lenses coming out, where we're really going to see the Z mount even being pushed harder. I'm not even sure it's been, with a lot of lenses we have, they're doing stuff with the glass, but I'm not sure they've used all of it yet. And that's what the pitch was with the Plena. Have you had a chance to use the Plena?
No, and it really excites me, actually.
Mate, you've got to get one. You've got to get one.
But I might for this next job, actually, because it's a lot of night shoots. The 50mm 1.2. Oh my gosh! Listening to you then about the 85 1.4. That was my favourite lens for 25 years.
There you go.
And I still have one, and it still is beautiful. But then I took delivery of the 85 1.2 and the 50 1.2, and I go on night shoots, Matt, and I will put my zooms and everything away. I'll take two Z9s, I'll have a 50 1.2 and an 85 1.2, and I'll just shoot the whole night. And some nights I even just put on a 50mm 1.2 and only shoot with that. Now the thing, which you know all about, but I never did before the Z9, was I didn't really use DX. Now I use DX as frequently as what I would change a lens. Like my favourite outdoor lens is a 24 to 120 f4. I think that's absolutely dead set, brilliant outside lens for a film set photographer like me. You can't get any better. And I will then shoot that onto DX, and it's like having, my 200mm on it as well, and I'm losing nothing. Like literally, I'm just going back to where I was on the previous camera, 24 megapixels. So. It's
look, I'll tell you something. I recently did a corporate event, and I had the two Z9s, and I'd normally do a 24 to 70 2.8 and a 70 to 200 2.8, and I thought, you know what, I'll try the 135 because I get what is it, 1.5 or 1 1/3 extra stops of light with the Plena. And so by using DX, I was able to go from 135 to around 200 by just using the DX button, which I've got mapped to function 3, I think, and it's the 70 to 200 S is an amazing lens. We agree, but the Plena is more amazing. It just is. I mean, it's a prime. It's extraordinarily good at being a 135mm lens. So yeah, I wholeheartedly suggest you throw one of those into your kit, and I think it will make a grown man cry.
I'm going to make a call straight after this, actually. No, but I mean, you're 100% correct. There is a difference between the zooms and the primes. And, you know, for a decade there really wasn't. There wasn't much difference between a zoom and a prime. And now it really has. It's gone back to like that mid-80s, early 90s difference, you know, when we had the push-pull 80 to 200 and
gosh,
you know,
I had that.
Yeah, right. And you had to have the primes because the primes were, you know, they were better. And
they were clearly better, yeah.
They were clearly better. And, you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the zooms at all.
No.
But they really, the primes have just kicked. I think there was so much development put into probably the zooms, and they've got to a level where they are just brilliant. But now that with what you're talking about with the coatings and stuff with the glass, you know, the Plena and which I got to try, it's incredible. And just one more really quick one on the difference between the 1.8s and the 1.2s. Now, I have the 1.8s as well, and there's a lot of times where I will still pull out the 1.8 because it's got a smaller, you know, capture area, so to speak, you know, the front element. And so if I'm shooting into light and stuff like that, if I don't want flare, I'm able to get rid of that flare. It's not capturing it. So, you know, they really, and obviously the weight, and not everyone can afford a 1.2, but, you know, I'm really looking forward to it. I hope that the 35 1.2 comes out soon. I don't even know if it's on the roadmap, and I'm sure that there's got to be a 58 as well. Again, like I said, I have no inside knowledge whatsoever. Yeah. It's just, you know, I dreamed of a Z9 and I got one.
Yeah. Well, the 35 has been sitting on the line next to the 50 and the 85 1.2s for about a year now, or maybe longer. And so we're all calling it a 35 1.2, and I think it is. I'm going to come out and say today, Jason, it is. And but who knows? Yeah, who knows when it's coming?
I want one.
Yeah, I want one too. But I thoroughly recommend the 135 at 1.8 Plena for what you do, because just literally holding that lens in your hand, the world, like the 85 1.2, you kind of go, oh man, it's such a cinematic lens, right?
Yeah.
The 135 is actually just a tiny bit more cinematic. Now I know it's, you know, it might not work in a lot of interiors because you don't have the space to walk away, but night shooting and exteriors, I think you will literally be going, oh my God, this is so good. I can't help myself. Oh my God. Yes. Anyway, that's a recommendation from me. So just circling back to firmware updates and the fact that we've just had such an amazing amount on the Z9, and you and I would both remember the D3 days where we'd own a D3 and then a couple of years later a D3S would come out, and they've tweaked it a tiny bit. And what's crazy is that the firmware updates that we've had with the Z9 have just one firmware update has exceeded the difference between a D3 and a D3S. So not to kind of repeat what we were saying before, but I look upon it as from a financial perspective, you own a Z9 and then you've basically had a Z9S, a Z9S2, a Z9S3, and we haven't had to pay for it. I mean, this is my guess is that this whole firmware strategy is as old as the strategy around the XP 7, as in they've been developed together. And I think it's kudos to Fuji, because they also had a lot of firmware updates, which they slowed down a little bit and don't seem to be doing it quite the same. Although they did have an announcement yesterday that they might be doing it. But anyway, that's Fuji. But just from a financial perspective, the fact that your camera is basically a new camera, and we don't have a shutter, so there's no shutter count. So it's kind of like a new camera. And then my guesstimate is going to be that there's, you know, Z9 II, obviously we'll have a Z9 II at some point, and that'll have a major hardware bump, whether it's better dynamic range, because I'm not really sure how much more speed we need, maybe a little bit more speed. I don't think we'll have much more resolution, because 45 is just such a sweet spot for lenses, diffraction, 8K video, all that sort of stuff. And, you know, who actually is putting their hand up as a professional going, my clients have asked for more than 45 megapixels for what we shoot? Nobody was asking when we had 12 megapixels. Anyway, and yeah, you'll get a hardware difference between a Z9 and a Z9 II, which will be exciting. And then you and I as photographers will just make a decision. Do we want what the Z9 II brings? Or, you know, do we just stick with this phenomenal camera? So from a financial perspective, I just think it's unbelievable. And I don't know whether we want to talk about but, you know, you look at the Sony A1, which is basically the same camera from a flagship perspective. To the best of my understanding, hasn't really had any significant firmware updates at all. And it came out at the start of 2021. So in a 3-year period. So just simply from a financial perspective, I just really can't believe how much Nikon is providing here. And my hope is that this is an ongoing strategy, that the idea is through the life of the camera, so let's say it's a 4 or a 5 year cycle, that this approach will continue. Now, we don't know, but, you know, I think it's pretty awesome.
Well, 2 things from that, Matt. Number one, you talk about financial, and, you know, cameras, they're expensive for us guys, for all of us.
Yeah.
And the fact that Nikon keep bringing out these firmware means that we've got more money to spend on glass.
Nice.
So
nice. Good point.
It's actually a pretty smart strategy, if that is the strategy. I mean, like, if I was a marketing person and that would be mine, let's get it. You know, you think about it all the time. You talk about someone who's on a different system to what we are, and you go, you really want to come over to this camera, blah, blah, blah. And like, yeah, but I've got too much money invested in glass. That's the answer every time. It's never about the body. It's always about the money invested in the glass.
True.
And if Nikon are giving us these cameras, or these firmware updates, which are literally, as you say, new cameras, well then I'm going to go and spend that $5,000 on some glass, and it'll probably be the Plena, because I just packed my 200 f2 because, as I was saying, I've got a lot of night shoot stuff coming up with action, and just talking to you then, the Plena 1.8, I throw it back to DX. I'm going to have a 205 or a 210. Anyone want to buy my 200 f2? You're more than welcome to.
I might, just because that's such an exotic and beautiful lens. But we can talk about that later.
Oh my gosh, it is gorgeous.
Yeah.
And
but it's you know, it's, I would say, significantly bigger and heavier. I mean, the Plena is exactly the same size as the 85 and slightly lighter. So that's why it's so exciting, Jason, because you're getting such phenomenal reach and when you go to DX, more reach and low light. Like, you must be like me. It's like we're shooting at nighttime in ambient light with these 1.2 and 1.8 lenses. You don't even have to push the ISO that hard, and you're getting results. And it's like, my mind has just exploded. Like, because when I started shooting, I was shooting with tripods, you know, and film. And the idea of shooting handheld at night in the dark, it was just a fantasy. So yeah, honestly, I didn't realize you had the 200 f2. It'll make you so excited to be able to essentially replace that lens for a lot of scenarios. So yeah. Anyway.
I'm literally gonna finish with you, and I'm gonna order one.
I'll look forward to my commission.
Literally, it was like an absolute light bulb above my head listening to you talk about it. So thanks, Matt.
It's a pleasure.
Hey, now, one thing to talking about what we've been, you know, the life cycle of the camera. Now, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm not even sure whether there's a need to replace or update the camera until there's a new sensor. What do you think about that?
Yeah, totally agree. And my look, this does segue into a speculative discussion, probably around global sensor or not. So the Z9 is 2 years old, about 3 months ago. So at best, it's around halfway through its cycle. If they return to a kind of 4-year cycle for the flagship camera, then it's about halfway through its cycle. What we see is Sony has released the A9 III, which is the first gen of global, and you know, depending on who you are, we've all talked about the pros and the cons of, and that also influences what we think are pros and cons of the A9 III. But I don't know if you've come across the fact that RED, just weeks after the A9 III launch, launched an 8K global Raptor X camera, it's global, and it doesn't have 12 stops of dynamic range, it's got 17 stops of dynamic range. So what this says to us, Jason, is better technology already exists. And you know, I've spoken to a few people in the industry, and they've said to me that Sony don't make RED sensors. You know, who makes sensors is it's black magic. Nobody wants to talk about it, but that's the information I've received from someone who has worked in the industry, in the cinematography industry for a very long time. So they're not in this, you know, Canon, Sony, Nikon space. So what this said, so the reason I'm saying all of this is there are other people doing global tech. There are other people doing global really well, and it actually is real and it exists and it's come out. And I'm actually going to a presentation this weekend to see the new RED camera for real. Oh
wow.
Yeah. And so what that says to me is the tech is here, and you know, in 2 years' time, is that maybe what a Z9 II is? And I reckon I'd put even money. I reckon it's 50-50 as to whether, because we know that Nikon will not release it unless it's as good as, from a dynamic range perspective, as a Z9 today, right? So it needs to be at least as good. It can't be a backward step. I don't believe anyway. Now, you know, maybe 5% is okay, and that's fine. I would accept that as well. But I constantly talk about I want more dynamic range and I want better ISO performance. So it's possible that they won't go down trying to make it faster, global, and they go into other, like there's areas you can choose to go into, which is more sensitivity or more speed is kind of the trade-off we have at the moment. But because the Z9 is the flagship and they've usually been about speed, but then you could speculate, is there potentially two variants of the Z9? And you have basically a Z9 that's more like a D6, where it's lower megapixels, and lower megapixels means better dynamic range, better high ISO, but it's global. So I don't know. I don't know, but I would definitely think, to answer your question of like a long time ago, definitely there'll be a new sensor, and it'll either be global or it'll either have a more sensitive sensor. That's my guess. I mean, like, how do you feel about megapixels? I know I made my little joke earlier, but do you ever feel like you need more? I don't.
No, I don't need any more megapixels.
What do you need? Well, tell us what you need.
I tell you what I need, and I think, you know, I mean, Nikon has always been legendary for their low light capability and you know, high ISO, and you know, everyone that knows me knows that my saying is, you know, Nikon can see in the dark like a cat full of carrots. Yep. And they really can, and I think that is the area that they will keep improving, because there's nothing, you know, I mean, like, the Z9 and Z8 are more than capable low light cameras, you know, 6400 ISO all the way up, and you know, there's all this AI software now which you can tidy things up, which actually blows me away. So, you know, you've got that area there, but I really think that the next frontier is going to continue to be the low light capabilities, and you know, this is the oldest argument in the world in photography is noise. Yep. And you know, we go back to film, and it was like, yeah, but it's too grainy. Yep. And then we get into, you know, cameras, it's like, you know, it's too noisy. Now the Z6 II, the ZF low light beast, and you know, the Z9 and Z8, they're all great. Yep. with the noise, but I want to be able to go to infinity and have no noise. Yeah. Now, one bit of tech which I was told about a long time ago was a sensor which has already been developed. Obviously, the cost is through the roof, and this wasn't from anyone at Nikon that told me about it. It's a sensor that each pixel works as an individual sensor itself. So that is going to eliminate noise. There will be no such thing as noise. And then you think about it with you know, cinematic blue screen and green screen, and you know, just us taking the background out like we are now with generative AI or generative fill, you know, you'll plug in a distance, like, you know, to my ear is, you know, say 1.2 meters, turn everything beyond 1.2 meters into Fiji. That's it. That's what that sensor will do. So, you know, it's always been on my mind that that is some tech which is out there. It's going to be exciting to see whether that is the next sensor, so to speak, you know, or the next path that we go down.
The ZF, to the best of my understanding, because it's XP7, but it's only got 24 megapixels to think about, there is more processor time to do some noise reduction of the files, even the raw files, and that's why the ZF, along with it being 24 megapixels, so the photo sites are larger, you couple those two things together, that's why it looks so clean, and it is ridiculously clean, and we haven't talked about the ZF at all really yet. I totally agree with you that we might get more in-camera processing of noise, and whether it's a mix of sensor and processor, or whether, I mean, I cannot believe I take a 6400 ISO, so 6400 ISO image into Photoshop, and I just say reduce noise, and it basically looks like we've gone back to base ISO, and it's like, what? I mean, noise is almost irrelevant, and as you're saying, if we can do that in camera at some point, so that may well be the sort, and I think we're starting to see it with the ZF. I mean, they've always done it. There's always been noise reduction in cameras, but it's a different type of noise reduction. Now if we're seeing it happen with AI, that's whole next level. So it might be possible, Jason, that's how it's solved. It's solved a lot with AI on board, and we never really see what the files actually, you know, how noisy or not they are. But yeah, it's super exciting stuff. So tell me about the ZF. Do you have a ZF? Do you love it? Do you take it away?
Yeah.
Do you sleep with it?
It's well, almost. I gave my ZF-C to my wife, and so she's using that, and yeah, I love the ZF. You know, I come from that. You know, I come from that era.
Yeah.
When my first professional camera was a Nikon FT2. You know, so it feels nostalgic with all the amazingness that goes with it, and you know, I did a test video with it shooting ice hockey. And it was more than capable of shooting action. Was it my Z9? No, it wasn't. But it's not meant to be. But you know,
and you don't pay for it. You don't pay for it,
and you don't. No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people still like to have a mechanical shutter, and there's reasons for having that. And again, that's why I say, you know, you've got to have the tool to shoot what you shoot. It's the ZF. It's just a thing of beauty, really. You know, a functional beauty.
Yeah.
It's a complete hybrid crossover. Nikkomat. It's got Z6, Z6 II, and it's got Z8. You know, it really is quite an incredible piece of equipment. And you know, if it's what you're after, then you should be getting it. For a film set, it's actually probably the most capable camera on a film set that's, you know, not based around action. So, you know, like the Z6 and the Z7 II, the Z6, or the Z6 II, I should say, is a really, really amazing camera on a film set. The Z7 II, I never used it for unit work, but I used it for all my posters, you know, like Thor posters and Shang-Chi. And when I first sent the files over to Disney, a lot of the studios, they still want you to use, you know, captures and, you know, Hasselblads and medium format. And I'm like, you know, I've got to shoot action with this poster shoot, so I can't use one of those cameras. The focus is too slow. There's so many limitations of using the medium format camera. And when they saw the files, this is the Z7 II, they just sent back going, we have never seen files like this.
Yeah.
This is the marketing department of Disney. And then the same thing with the Z9 and the Z8. And, you know, you throw in you do a poster shoot action, right? And I like to keep things moving, and you know, I do, even when I'm on a seamless shooting a poster, I will have people running around. Now you pair that with a ProPhoto 11, and I can shoot 15 frames a second.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
With strobe.
Yeah,
it's like, come on.
Yeah.
So you know, it's just nuts. It really is nuts. You know, you and I are similar vintage. I'm a bit older than you, but you know, we've seen everything.
Yeah. We know how spoilt we are today as well, which I think is it's so important that everybody realizes who's newer to the industry that this technology, honestly, is not only making, you know, our craft more precise and accurate, but it's allowing us to push further. Like you're saying, 15 frames a second there with your pro photos. I mean, it's, I don't know, the creative exploration, the fact that, you know, when we shot on film, if, you know, we never doubted whether we could get the shot, but people don't realize today, you know that you got the shot because you can see it on the back of the camera. But we just had to shoot, you know, you'd go out and you'd shoot 10 rolls of film of whatever, and you've done your job and you've gotten paid, but it was way more scary in the sense that, well, something could go wrong. You could lose the film. You could be exposed. It could be damaged at the lab. You could have stuffed up the rollback. You could actually, you know, there was... And that's just one aspect of why digital photography is just so much easier. But to me, easy is kind of the wrong word, because as some things have become easier, I like to try and make other things harder, if that makes sense. You know, we push the envelope somewhere else. So I love the fact that it allows me to, you know, stop worrying here so I can worry somewhere else. I don't know if that makes any sense. But like I said, walking around handheld at night, you couldn't do. And then I got a D3, which could, you know, you could shoot it at 1600, 3200 ISO and get away with it. And obviously it's just, then we got IBIS, and we've just amazing lenses. And so you've just been able to keep inching and pushing the tech further and further. And it's such a joy, such a joy.
In the early days, I used to have to shoot, you know, my unit stuff on 15th of a second.
Yeah.
And, wow. and you know, and you think about it, it's like, you know, a roll of 36, now we go through that in less than a second and a half. Yeah. It's like I could never imagine doing my job then now, but I did.
That's the thing, we did.
Yeah, we learn how to do it, don't we?
We did.
And then now...
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, and then now we've got this... It's not a... What's a good Pandora's box? Because that's what it is. It's like you open up this box and, you know, out jumps the clown, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like
all this opportunity
these things that you can... all this opportunity. And I still use my cameras, you know, my super tech cameras now, the Z9, the Z8, the same way as I used my D3 and D4s. Yeah. And I just know that they can do so much more. And, you know, we had to learn exposure and we had to learn light.
Yep.
Now, there's a lot of things that photographers that are coming through don't know about. And it disappoints me to a degree that they'll just throw everything on auto because, you know, you're the boss of the camera. The camera's not the boss of you. You've got to tell it what to do. And especially with shooting manual, right? You're going to learn more about what light does in an hour of shooting manual exposure than what you're going to in a year of shooting auto exposure. And you've got your eyes. We're already seeing what exposure looks like. You've got your wheels. You're looking through the EVF. You're seeing the exposure change in real life. You're not just leaving a camera to anticipate or decide what it wants to do for you. I mean, you've got to be the boss of that camera. And I keep going on about it, I know, but the Z9 and the Z8 will do what you tell it to do. It won't, you know, it doesn't have a mind of its own. As much as people want it to or think they do, you've got to tell the camera what to do and it will follow. And That's 90% of problems.
You and I have both always obviously been manual shooters. It might be partly because we started shooting when we were absolutely, you know, cameras were, half the cameras I used were fully manual, so I had to pull out a light meter anyway. And so once we got cameras that with EVFs, it's like, well, manuals become so easy. But the thing I don't understand about shooting with any sort of auto, and this is where you and I end up in a lot of situations where there's a lot of different light sources, and the camera will go, oh, there's a bright light, so I need to go dark. But it's like, no, no, no. I, the photographer, I want that light to be overexposed because I want to see the rest of the scene. I don't want the camera to react to that. And then I find it interesting that then people use the exposure compensation dial to kind of fight with the camera that's making the wrong decision. No, just go manual. Just, it doesn't, I mean, you and I both, we're going, you know, click, 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 and it takes like 1 second to get your exposure. That's then, the interesting thing to me is, you know, I shoot a lot at twilight, and the light remains, you know, every say 15, 20 minutes you need to change because the light's fading.
Yeah.
But if you're around a lot of, you know, other light sources like car headlights or shop window, you know, whatever it is, your camera will keep bouncing around. But if you're locked off, I mean, manual, you're locked off. So then you don't think, I don't think about my exposure anymore for that 20 minutes because I've got it balanced, I've got it right. And on auto, if you were shooting on auto in your industry and you get a studio light in the corner of frame and suddenly it's underexposed because the camera's reacted, then you're not doing your job. So, you know, I think it's amazing that people just don't even want to just shoot manual because I don't even think it's hard. Like, do you think? I don't think it's hard. I think it's easy.
I think it's harder shooting auto.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because you get random results. You get random results. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's not, you know, that's exactly what we keep coming back to, is that you got to tell the camera what to do.
Yeah. Really, why we're here, while we're on YouTube, is because of the massive community that we love sharing with and actually being a part of. And I'm planning to do a photo walk soon. Maybe I need to do a photo walk on the Gold Coast, but what's your community like around you, whether it's professionals or hobbyists and enthusiasts?
You know, Matt, I don't have a great deal of photographers as friends, or professional photographers as friends, but I have a lot of enthusiasts that are. And, you know, I don't find, honestly, there's much difference anymore, Matt, between a pure professional and the enthusiast. Now, the way that I see it, I learn so much from the enthusiasts. I get sent stuff on social media all the time. I'm always looking at people's work. And the thing that sticks out to me is, you know, that pure love of photography. You know, the enthusiast is the heart of photography. But the gap has narrowed so much between the professional and the enthusiast that there's not much difference. And who's to say that, you know, you or I are any better than the office worker that's sitting in the cubicle all day long or all week long, and then on the weekend takes their camera out the same as yours and mine. Who's going to outshoot who? I don't think there's much difference in the knowledge, if any difference. And I'm just glad to be in a community of photographers these days where we're all in the same fruit salad bowl.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all got access to the same technology, and we've all got access to so much information here on YouTube. And the beauty of the enthusiast, unlike us, is they don't have the pressure. They don't have the financial pressure of delivering. And sometimes because we have that pressure, we have to, you know, deliver hard and fast. Whereas the enthusiast doesn't have that same ticking clock. And that certainly gives them a lot of space to experiment, excel, create things that we've maybe never seen before. And look, it's interesting you bring that up, because there are times where I go, oh yeah, I want to do this and that for the channel, but I just don't have time. And because, you know, you've just got to keep things moving. So yeah, look, there has been an epic democratization of photography since we moved from film to digital, and we are totally living in that world today. So that's a beautiful point. And I you know, I don't even personally delineate. Like, you get a good photo, it's a good photo, you know. And whether you're a professional or not a professional, if you're an astounding artist and and art is so subjective, right? So if it's something that might resonate with you and bring you to tears, I might go meh, you know, and vice versa. It doesn't matter. It's just I think we can tell when people's hearts are in the right place, and then that will come through their art. I reckon that's where that lands for me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you there, Matt. You don't have to be paid to be a great photographer, and that's where the leveling is. You take the money away, and we are 100% all on the same level. And you know, what you were saying about experimentation and stuff like that, you know, I'm on a film set 10 hours a day, 5-6 days a week, and I don't often have time to experiment. All I have time to do is refine my process. So, you know, experiment and refinement.
When I started my career, I was making pieces of art and setting things on fire, and you know, all sorts of. I'd get a person dressed up as Santa and make him walk on water. I made this range of greeting cards and all this sort of creative exploration and crazy ideas that you'll do in your 20s and you don't have a mortgage to pay. So they're probably not the best examples, but I did so much experimentation and just crazy things, and you know, it's just not the time for it. Whereas the enthusiast doesn't have the ticking clock. So yeah, look, it's a beautiful. We're so lucky to live in this time. We talked earlier how the technology is just unbelievable. There is no bad camera. There really is no bad camera or camera system, and you can achieve just greatness with anything today. And I think I can speak for both of us in saying just everybody just keep creating, keep having fun, and get out there and use this beautiful gear and enjoy the world. You know, we live on this astonishing planet, and I don't want to get too biblical or whatever, but we really do live. I mean, that's my inspiration is life itself, the planet, the sky, the trees, people, and what humanity has created. And if you can distill some of those moments into something that connects with another human being, you know, in other words, I see something beautiful in the world and it gives me goosebumps, and then if I can encapsulate that and share that with someone else, that's my juice. I am so happy to have been able to share the joy of existence, basically. And ultimately we just have the best tools today, and really they're only going to get better.
Man, that is so true. 99% of photography is about life, photographing life and key moments in your life and beautiful things that you've seen in your life, and that's what photography is about. You know, I mean, of course we've got the PJ side of things and the news element and things like that, but that's actually a very, very small part of photography, and photography is a thing of beauty. You know, it is exactly what you said. You know, it's art. I don't think of myself as an artist, which is a little bit strange, I guess. You know, I only think of myself as a storyteller. But I'm coming around to it because
mate, you're an artist because you're making decisions about light and frame and a moment in time, and they are all subjective decisions. There is there's no scientific one objective. This is the way to capture this scene. And what I love about where we are in our careers is we're actually making, like, I don't know, 1,000 choices in the blink of an eye that just all happen, but we make those choices. And that's what delivers the results.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I look in a mirror and I don't see an artist, but then I look at my photographs later and I go, did I do that? No way. And it's like, it kind of blows me away because I don't know. I think that's maybe what gives me a little bit of an edge is that I don't know whether I was the best yesterday, today or tomorrow. So I keep striving to be the best and pushing myself in every single film. And I'm not even joking. I'm getting better every single film, and you know, like I was saying, it comes down to refinement, and you know, I've got the basic skills, and yeah, you know, maybe when I'm gone, you know, I'll be happy with being classified as an artist.
Do you know what? Labels don't matter anyway, and I don't want to say that as a cliche. It's completely irrelevant. You know, for me personally, you know, you'll get people in your comments, or you know, I've sold my work at my galleries for decades, and people will come in and go, oh, I don't like that, or oh, anybody can do that. Doesn't matter. It's how do you feel within yourself? If you are content that you are pushing yourself, continuing to grow as a human and delivering a result that keeps you and your client happy, then, I don't know, call that whatever you want to call it. A service provider, a photographer, an artist, a creator, it doesn't matter. Are you comfortable? And what I love about people like us who've been in this career so long is we're comfortable with who we are, but we also like to keep pushing who we are. And that's part of our life's journey. We will, and that's the passion, and we will never stop pushing because we find it fun. It's fun. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. I love it so much.
Right? I mean, like, you come back and you've got this amazing image, and it's like, holy crap, look at that. And you know, you got to have that. Once you lose the excitement, you know, you're done. And exactly what you said then, you know, pushing the boundaries and pushing yourself. You know, I'm not going to sit there and push myself against... Actually, that was going to sound really bad. I'm not going to, which you will cut out, because I was going to sit there and say, I'm not going to sit there and push myself against you, Matt.
Mate, anytime.
Pushing the boundaries, pushing not only the boundaries, but pushing ourselves, that's absolutely key.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're never going to fall beside, you know, there's a lot of competition out there, especially, you know, being a professional photographer, and, you know, you got to stay ahead of the pack. And if you want to stay ahead of the pack, then you will. If you're just like happy to cruise, then you'll cruise.
And I think an interesting thought that came from all of that for me is it's the experimentation, the pushing, and then the outcome. And if it does bring great joy, then that's why we're here creating images, right? That's the point. And that can only happen by grabbing your camera, going out and shooting whatever it is you want to shoot. Doesn't matter whether it's birds, buildings, or people, whatever, but you've got to be out there, and then you've got to be out there pushing the edge. And that's where the passion and the excitement and the enthusiasm comes from.
I'm going to wrap up on that one. But you're exactly right, Matt. It's no different than the exposure triangle. And if you don't have everything come together in the exposure triangle, you don't have a shot.
Yeah.
So if you're out there shooting on location and you don't have the triangle of things that come together, you still don't have a shot.
Yes, I mean, we could end on this veritable famous quote from the absolute philosophical juggernaut of Hannibal from the A-Team. We love it when a plan comes together, don't we, Jason?
We love it when a plan comes together, Matt.
Very good,
absolutely.
Mate. Now, Jason and I, we were wondering whether us getting together and chewing the fat about photography, about the industry, about our just freaking deep passion for photography is something that we should do more regularly. Should we do it monthly, quarterly, 6 months? We would love you to let us know in the comments below. Should we get together and do this? Jason's always working on either a massive motion picture. You do work on the odd TV series as well, don't you, Jason? So there's always exciting things happening in Jason's world. We're both always playing with very similar gear that we freaking love. And yeah, so if you'd like us to get together more often and chat, let us know in the comments below. Jason, as always, it's been an immense pleasure to have not only you and your awesomeness, but your Aussie-ness and your passion to share here with the community, our beautiful photographic community. So thank you, sir, for your time. And, well, I hope the commenters want us to see each other earlier. Otherwise, we'll just ring each other on the phone and talk turkey while we ride our bikes along our relative beaches. Sir, it's been so good. Any final words before we go?
No, man, I just love your channel, and thank you so much for having me on board again. And, you know, I do love our chats, and if no one wants to listen to it, like you said, we'll just call each other and talk for hours anyway.
Yeah, so, that's right. We'll talk industry, talk behind the scenes. It's all good. We can be a bit looser there anyway. All right, sir. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here. As always, it's been fantastic. If this is your first time here, we would love you to subscribe, to share, and to like. Hit up Jason's Instagram. It's amazing. You see lots of Hollywood stars because he's there in the room shooting them for real. So check out his Insta, check out his YouTube. All of it's epic and massive and wonderful. All right, everybody, we will see you soon. Catch you, Jason. See you, everybody.
Cheers, team.